given the subject, this is as power-packed a panel as it gets. The 1 trillion pot of gold and realizing that in a sustainable way. These are the exact two things we were discussing just before we came. So we shall carry the informal conversation now to a more formal setting and look forward to your views. There is a lot of chatter and a lot of talk, a lot of policy push on manufacturing. There is a lot of policy push on Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is no longer just a slogan. We are seeing it playing out in various aspects of business. The question, therefore, is when we start on the Atmanirbhar journey over the next 25 years, the journey has begun. When we continue on that journey, how is India Inc. going to achieve that in terms of putting up manufacturing facilities, taking that manufacturing export story forward in a more sustainable manner? Because if we don't do it, there is possibility of serious trouble, as we are already witnessing in various ways, in terms of climate change and various other aspects of business. So I'll start off first with you, Mr. Chaudhry. Basically, first, we will divide this discussion into two parts. One is the manufacturing story, where you see that heading, and then we will sort of intersperse it with the climate change, the ESG agenda. So first off, I would like to know from each of you, and starting off with Mr. Chaudhry, what is your sense of the way the manufacturing push, the manufacturing story, and the export story is being built out? Where do you see that happening?
Thank you, and good evening, good afternoon, everybody, and very pleased to be here today. So I think this is a very important aspect which you asked, because I represent Schneider Electric, and we play both sides. We are manufacturers as well as we help a lot of colleagues here to set up the manufacturing facilities. I think the focus which is there today as part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, companies which are like us, which are in India, as India, and face of Schneider in India. But we are today setting up the facilities not only to cater to India capacity, but more so balancing the manufacturing capacities globally of Schneider Electric in India. I think what also is changing with the way government has provided that initiative and accelerated PLI and a lot of other programs is that the manufacturing facilities which are being set up today in India are actually helping India leapfrog the worldwide manufacturing facilities which are coming with the latest technologies. Take an example, because today, we are one of those players, together with many which are available in India, for Industry 4.0 and smart factories. This is first step toward going toward what we call as ESGs and sustainability and all efficiency. And we have established 2 of our factories in India as smart factories, and one of them is recognized at World Economic Forum in Davos in May as Lighthouse of Manufacturing. Very proud moment for us, for sure, but for India, because this is done by India team and all. And I think we encourage, and there are a lot of interactions happen with our colleagues from CIE, FICCI and all. We encourage our customers, other industry veterans who want to establish new infrastructure to come and visit, see that how the factories of the future are being built in India, which will take India much at a faster pace, compete globally, not only in terms of the products, but also in terms of more sustainable, more green products being manufactured from here. That's the way we are contributing on both sides of the equation.
I'll throw the same question to you, Ashish. Where do you see the India manufacturing story, the export story, with all these, the government push by way of PLI, by way of the FTAs, for instance? Where do you see that heading, and how are we achieving the $1 trillion dream?
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody. I would concur with what Mr. Chaudhry just mentioned, and we also sit in the same spot where we have our own manufacturing setup, and we also serve the manufacturing industries, right? And it's a unique position, and the world will watch companies like ours, because we need to make sure that we walk the talk. What I mean by that is, when we are talking about sustainable solutions, when we are talking about manufacturing with goodness, which kind of makes it green, makes it more environment friendly, are we doing the same thing in our own facilities? I think that's going to be a very, very important point to note. Because it's easy to preach, but then it's difficult to follow the same thing. So as a result of that philosophy, even before the whole set of jargons that we use today in the last 4 or 5 years, Honeywell started looking at this particular aspect of manufacturing and how we need to therefore make it green starting 2004. And it's about 18 years now. We've started looking at how do we monitor our greenhouse emissions, the energy consumptions, etc. And the advantage of that, while doing it globally, as Mr. Chaudhry mentioned, we can adapt to those technologies and leapfrog. We don't have to make the same mistakes and therefore go through the same curve, but actually accelerate. And I see a huge opportunity. I'll give you 2 examples why I say that. If you see the newspapers nowadays, of course, the fuel of the future people are talking about is hydrogen, for example, right?
Yes.
A lot of mobility will go towards hydrogen. Of course, electric is one part, but the hydrogen would be the other part. And the ambition of a country like ours is to become a hydrogen hub for the world, not just for India. And so that's going to take a lot of technology. That's going to take a lot of adoption of that technology to sort of serve the world and bring the price of hydrogen from, let's say, $7, $8 a kg today to about $1 per kg. And that journey is very exciting. And I believe the second aspect is all of what is required, because everybody is getting pushed towards the limits and therefore is forced to innovate. That needs talent. And one of the biggest talent pools that is available will be in India. So the companies like ours, if they invest into a country like India, train the young minds, make sure that they get into the mainstream, and then leverage that brain power, I think that's the other advantage when it comes to the manufacturing of exports, as you're talking about. So just wanted to add to and build on to what Mr. Chaudhry said.
Vivek, do you see the same trend playing out in your area? We were discussing earlier that you had last 2 or 3 of the best years or even despite COVID. So how do you see that story playing out?
Yeah, definitely, Sourav. We've doubled over the last 4 years. 2 of those years were COVID years. But before I get into the topic, let me congratulate India Today. I think I've had the chance to go through some of the sessions, very interesting. And I think the statement that you have, achieving global leadership, is really, it's the apt statement, apt topic to be debating, and it really reflects the aspiration and the mood that we have in India. I think from an economic perspective, and we see this, I'm in conversations with other markets as well across the globe. We are exchanging notes. I think India is at a place where there is tremendous positive momentum. The numbers show it. And also from a sentiment perspective, I think there is a lot of positivity in the industry, whether I look at customers, whether I look at my suppliers, or connect with peer groups. And, this is last 10 days, I would say this is the 3rd event I'm in, speaking as well. And really the vibe is very much visible. Now, we tackle the core sectors. We are in mining, power, cement, sugar. And I think after a long time, what I have seen is each of those sectors, very unrelated, but each of them, because of their own individual dynamic, are booming. And not just growing, but booming. And I think definitely if we maintain the momentum, if we maintain the spirit, then we are in for a wonderful next 10 years from an economic growth perspective.
Mr. Singhi, you must be a really happy man given the push on infrastructure, the kind of activity which we are seeing, the kind of activity the cement sector itself is witnessing over the last, I speak to cement CEOs and they're really a happy lot right now. Tell us about your experience and how you see your sector playing out in this overall manufacturing story.
Happy evening, ladies and gentlemen. I must thank India Today and Business Today for motivating global Indian leaders to talk about how India is going ahead, how India is embracing global leadership. First, I would say the way now Indian leadership has been able to understand that what future is, the way things would be moving on clean technologies, the things would be moving on space technologies, things would be moving on defense technologies. So government is able to understand that and roll out various policies which would be helping in a big way. And if anybody who would try to talk about India after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, they have to say that yes, India would be the global leader. Now, from cement sector point of view, I would say, one, we have been always global leader. Indian cement sector has been global leader since decades. One, because of their entrepreneurship. Second, their concern about energy cost. And today we may say that India might be better from Europe or US by 25-30% in terms of energy efficiency, and maybe sometime Schneider can confirm that. But point is that India is poised for a great growth, and the initiative now which our government has taken, one on International Solar Alliance, and then a commitment of 500 gigawatt for renewable energy, then green hydrogen, then now new area of gasification of coal, etc. So whatever resources we have, we are now trying to use that in a big way. Like the biggest resource India has in comparison to the whole world is the availability of sun. Sun is available maximum in a day in India than many countries. So now 500 gigawatt would take a big energy transition, clean energy transition. Second, the way this renewable energy would support hydrogen, green hydrogen, which according to me would be reducing the import of fuel, import of energy in a big way, which will make India more stronger. So now PLI schemes have been rolled out, and the way Indian corporates have been able to take up that, I think it will go a long way. From Indian cement industry point of view, we have been always Atmanirbhar also. And our dependence on outside world is just for some coal or petroleum coke, which slowly would also come down when we try to move more on green fuel or green power, etc. Or if we are able to do gasification of coal also. So that way I look India in a very bright way, and that's why our organization is also trying to go in a big way on capacity expansion also, so that we are always able to feed Indian need for cement.
Vijay, your group is a multi-diversified kind of a group. You're in various businesses, sugar, cogen, cement. How are you seeing all these factors, all these things playing out are you seeing the positive benefits of which in each of these sectors? Tell us a little bit about some of the sectors you're witnessing really big activity.
Absolutely. So at the outset, thank you so much for having us here. And I must congratulate your group for, it's not India at 75, like you said, outside. It's India for the next 25 years. I must give you great compliments that you've already started talking about it. And the subject that we are speaking is about sustainability and ESG and all these. I think it's the best type. I think we are already seeing implications as we spoke. And when it comes to manufacturing sector, so I just completed reading a book which is written by Bill Gates. It's on how to avoid a climate disaster. It's more of a handbook than anything else. And it speaks broadly about the most important things for any sector, for any transition to happen is markets, technology, and policy. And for example, let me speak more of sugar industry. I think Saab also will accept this, that sugarcane as one product has got multiple benefits. I mean, we can create more than 36 products, out of which we are creating about 18 products as on today. So just about 2018 and prior, we were a dying industry, and all of a sudden there is glam and glitter in this industry. So earlier we were called just as a sugar mill or a sweetener, and today we've started to rebrand ourselves as a bioenergy park, right? So to give you perspective, so just from one product, we're creating multiple of these products. For example, ethanol, which is one of the greenest energy possible. We are betting heavily on ethanol, and we have scaled up to about 2 million liters a day and counting. So we are scaling up even more. And cogeneration, again, is a green energy. So we're doing about 232 megawatts there. And in continuity, there is press mud, which used to be an absolute hindrance, which comes again from sugar industry. So now press mud is a very good potential for methane, so CH4, and it is the cleanest source of methane. So it's a carbon neutral, we're not creating extra carbon, so it's just CH4 that is being created from absolute waste. And along with that, so again, ethanol is C2H4 and OH, so we've got about 5 hydrogen atoms in ethanol, and we've got about 4 hydrogen atoms in methane. So going forward, sugar industry can be a very big source for hydrogen as well. And so just one product itself, our country has so much of potential to create. And I must give great regards to the government that they have woken up and they've been supporting us left, right, and center. And there is a big boom. So the world is looking at India. There have been tremendous growth in exports. There have been phenomenal achievement from the industry side. So I'm definitely, we are at a very good position here. So, and there is a realization, and all of us are investing heavily. And I must congratulate all the leaders that are on the podium that have spoken earlier today. I mean, everybody is creating change, and that transition is real. So.
Mr. Chaudhry, I want to come to you to understand what are the 2 or 3 triggers from the government in terms of policy, which you think will power the manufacturing export story in over the next few years?
In fact, I think first, of course, the slogan of Atmanirbhar Bharat itself is really very motivating, very encouraging for all industries to keep on exploring. I think the other one is the PLI has gone a long way. Of course, there are, as an industry, one of the things which we keep on debating, and we have asked, government to consider that, because if I have an established industry and I'm expanding capacities in that for exports, that doesn't fall under PLI. So you have to go to a new legal entities and all, whereas, there could be different ways of doing that. But also at this moment, because, many big pandemic has made many big corporates, global corporates, to relook at their whole supply chain.
That's right.
And what is many companies are calling in different terms, so power of 2 is one of that. There was one particular zone which was manufacturing hub of the world. I think the way the pandemic has shown, because with the way the supply chains were linked, one zone getting affected at one point of time, the other zone getting affected at another point of time, the other zone getting affected at another time. Supply chains are disturbed for long. We are still not normal. You all know semiconductors and all those things, IC, electronics, but there are many things. And that is why big work is going on, that how we go with the power of 2. And Indian government policies, ease of doing business, and also the perception about India, which has positively changed quite a lot in the last few years, is helping many of the corporate to look at India as additional base for manufacturing base. So I think that itself gives a lot of boost for this. And of course now, because when you have to be global, you have to be green, you have to be sustainable, I think the government policies around how they want BRR reports for top 100 for top 1,000 companies, listed ones, to be done. But I am sure that the way the benefits of this is there, even we see a lot of our partners which are in MSME category coming to us and trying to be part of that. And that's the momentum which is also happening at this.
Ashish, we had a very engaging session prior to this about regulatory cholesterol. Now, I want to hear from you now as we keep talking about how enormous possibilities of manufacturing hitting the 1 trillion mark and the exports and all of that. What are the sort of pitfalls you see in terms of this regulatory cholesterol? He spoke of ease of doing business, but that's there can be there can be a debate about that. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I think first of all, there is enough that is opened up by the government right now that we need to, as corporates, start getting aligned to. These are recently announced policies, policy changes, and we need to make sure that we are maximizing those, right? So before we start complaining about it. So, and all of us, as you see here, the tone is such that everybody wants to now go forward with these. The second thing I would say is, I was reading a very interesting report that many of these companies, many of us have come out with pledges, right? Companies are going to be net zero or carbon neutral by such and such date. Now, the interesting part of that report was, let's say if everybody meets all the pledges in the world, okay, even then, the temperature, the average temperature of the Mother Earth is probably not going to stay at 1.5 degrees. It's going to go exceed probably over 2 degrees. And that is catastrophic, right? So what I'm trying to get to is, there is a lot of work, even after all these pledges that everybody has taken, that needs a lot of push on innovation, and that needs a lot of push from all the governments, not just us here. For example, I think my friend talked about ethanol, right? If you look at the Western Hemisphere, there most of the fuel, which is the SAF they call it, which is the sustainable aviation fuel, is getting made out of the oil that comes from food, right? I don't think that's a viable solution in India. In India, we may have to take the route of taking ethanol and then converting that into diesel or SAF. Now, this is a new technology. It's going to need some investment. It's going to need some incentivization. It's going to need the companies to come forward and put facilities, development and research type of activities, which is again something that the government can look at, and therefore make the route faster and therefore leapfrog, right? So things like that is what I'm looking at.
From a Thyssenkrupp perspective, he spoke. He mentioned a very important point about the need for innovation, and therefore there is a lot of there is expense, there is investment attached to it. How do you think corporate India is reacting? Do you see corporate India actually starting to become much more conscious in terms of innovations, which can bring down the cost of some of these things?
Yeah, no. From our point of view, I think innovation is non-negotiable. And even, during my tenure in this role, I have completely moved the focus away from project to product. And the whole idea was that, for a project, then you're trying to always cut costs. But for a product, you're always trying to improve attributes. And how do you create more value for the customer? How do you create a pull? And that is a very critical and strong part of our DNA, and that is something which I've consistently pushed. And that could mean digitalization, that could mean developing better performance attributes, that could be reducing weight, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, what creates value for our customer? So having said that, I think the Indian mindset is still towards finding a collaborator somewhere in the world, and bringing that technology and just copying that with the license and delivering it to a customer. And that is where I think we have to move a bulk of the industrial mindset towards saying it's not that complicated. It requires a bit of discipline. But once you get the innovation engine fired up, once you bring that into your DNA, then I think, it's the same Indians who are sitting outside and creating all the innovations. Why can't the Indians sitting here in India do the same, right? And it's just that mental block that we have to remove, right? Now, also, I just wanted to very quickly comment on your, question, earlier question as well. I think from a India manufacturing growth perspective, I think there are two things that are extremely important. One, I think we have to continue on this journey of infrastructure creation, because infrastructure is critical for having strong competencies in manufacturing. And the second thing is we have to continue to work on reducing our factor costs, which means at the very basic level, steel and power. If we just focus with a single-minded passion on having the lowest cost of steel for industry in India and the lowest possible power for industry in India, I can tell you, despite every other constraint and challenge, India will become the #1 destination for manufacturing for the world. We don't have to do anything else, right? And that's where I am seeing some movements. I am seeing the right intent, but I think we really have to take it up as a mission.
At the Dalmia Group, for instance, you have been, as we speak about ESG, let me focus on the ESG part a little more now. Cement is, has known to be a polluting industry, and yet you have taken the pledge much earlier than most others in terms of converting yourselves to net zero. Tell us a little more about what made you arrive at that, and how you're going about achieving that objective.
Great question. So what I would say, that it was our vision which could motivate us to do more and more. Like in 2014-15, we created a vision to be leader in building materials, to create pride in all, evoke pride in all stakeholders through sustainability, innovation, customer centricity, and values. So at that time, we could think that yes, sustainability will make a sense, innovation will make a sense, concentrating on customers will make a sense. And then we created a philosophy which is clean and green, is profitable and sustainable. Now, based on that, we started acting that what can be done on E part, that it becomes sustainable, it brings down carbon dioxide emissions also, and at the same time, doesn't add to the cost, but reduces the cost. And whatever actions we have taken since those years and pledge of 2018, we can proudly say that we are today having the lowest carbon footprints in global cement world, and at the same time, one of the most profitable cement company also. And the way we have taken up our stand, that we will be going for 100% renewable by 2030, for power, 100% non-fossil by 2035, capturing whatever carbon dioxide which goes out, and then use it for some right purpose. So that is helping our organization to concentrate more on E part also. And at the same time, along with E, S and G is also very important. So this has been our in DNA since decades and decades. And working on society, and more particularly when we could understand the need of the nearby society about the water. So we acted in a big way to, one, create better livelihood of nearby society, conserving water there. And today we can say that we are 13 times water positive, which means it assures the villagers also, because the level of water has gone up, and then they are assured of their whatever agriculture work they can do. Thirdly, on governance part also, we are quite conscious of it, both internal governance also, external governance also, and whatever reporting we do, that is all done as per global standards. Even the, as per Companies Act, the reporting which was required to be done as a recommendatory, not mandatory, but we started implementing that. Another thing I would say is that we were the first in Indian industry to come out, or one of the first in the Indian industry to come out with the integrated report, which means that we talk of financial performance also, we talk of sustainable report also along with that. And we came out with the how to define 6 capital, whether it's a finance capital, human capital, social capital, technological capital, so that we are able to now foresee in our organization that what's going to happen after 10 years and 20 years, and trying to adapt those initiatives. One of the good things which recently has happened is that FL Smith, Denmark, which is one of the top cement technology provider, they have entered into an agreement with India, Dalmia Cement in Denmark in the presence of PM Modi ji, to decarbonize the cement world. So whatever we would be doing, along both of us, that would be available to the whole world. So we are a big follower of collaboration and innovation. And innovation, like what our Prime Minister has said on Independence Day also, Jai Anusandhan. And day in, day out now, he's talking about that, how to promote innovation, and this is what has been talked by my friends also. So this would go a long way, and innovating on ethanol part, so like using, just setting a standard for 10%, 15%, then maybe quarter by quarter, year by year, it's going up. Similarly on electric vehicles. Now the way it has taken up the speed, it's mind-boggling. nobody was thinking before 2 or 3 years. So this is what the trend in India is, and this is what Dalmia Cement is. I would say that we have been able to foresee the future and have been able to collaborate with all global meaningful organizations, have been able to report all those numbers. Somewhere, if we are not doing well as per those expectations also, we do share so that we start learning. And I would say that sharing more and more has helped us to learn more and more.
Mr. Singhi, I want to also ask you a supplementary question. Do you think we are at a stage now in the markets, for instance, where shareholders are recognizing this and rewarding companies which are, sort of looking at carbon neutrality and moving up the green value chain? Are you thinking? Do you think that this is now actually happening, or are we still not sort of open enough on that?
You are so right that fortunately now investors have woken up. Few companies had woken up earlier, but now investors have woken up, and now they are posing the right questions also, which many times forces companies to think of that what more can be done so that I can be better off than X, Y, Z. And sometimes competition in these areas does help innovation also. So there are now specific need, specific questions, specific scoring, which anybody would like to do that. And I would say that this has happened, once one of the biggest investor, BlackRock, he announced that companies who are not targeting certain ESG numbers, etc., we would not invest. That was done in Davos, in World Economic Forum, and thereafter we have seen, not globally, but Indian investors are, and that's the right way of doing it. So last I would like to say is that now the Indian government has also changed its mindset after the announcement of commitment of 2017 net zero carbon by our Prime Minister. And now slowly policies are being rolled out, whether it's a gasification, whether it's a green hydrogen, whether it's a renewable power, etc. Now, little bit more ease of doing is required in terms of creating green corridor for renewable power or a few more things, but that would happen. So I don't have now doubt that these things would not happen. It's just a matter of time, and we have to bear it.
Vijay, do you think the BRSR for the top 1,000 companies, the new reporting system, which is now mandatory for FY23, do you think that will make a difference, or do you think it will be a tick mark and companies are still not warming up to it enough as they should have?
Absolutely. So just before we go on to that, I must say on a lighter note, when we speak of transitioning and getting cleaner, so I was jokingly telling Sahab that, Sahab, we have got this power of scale. So I have got a very small cement plant right next to his. And thanks to him, we met in Davos, and he was speaking more of going clean. And, going clean has a big profitability as well. For example, what we did in our cement unit is we offset our power imports with windmills. So that is absolutely clean now. There is a replacement of 8 rupees a unit to almost 2.5, 3 rupees a unit. And it's absolutely clean. And I was happy that I got to be his neighbor again here also. And so with that said, of course, sir, I think the way Dalmia group reports as well. So now it is a mandation, and now that the Himalayan group is also looking at getting ourselves listed in the very soon. So of course, reporting is a mandation, and we are in the governance part. So it is a very important aspect, and I believe there should be a little more stricter norms, because you see, there needs to be a iron rod for us to transition also. So now that we have the suites, so there are, for example, there is the PLI schemes. There are many ease of doing business. For example, in Karnataka, we are ranked #1. And there is support left, right, and center, like I said again. So, there must be a little from governance part as well. So the more we start exposing ourselves as what we have done, and they have done this voluntarily, I think there must be an iron hand, so where we start doing it just for the greater good. With an underline, I mean to say that there is a good profitability in going clean. So with that underlining, I mean, of course, the reporting should be there, of course.
Do you think the India Inc. generally is waking up to it, or like he says, there should be a danda which now is becoming very, very important and imperative? Yeah.
No, I think you're right. It's not that danda, because what Mr. Mahendra ji said and what he has narrated, that there is a movement happening. there's a need from all stakeholders, whether you are a user, whether you are a supplier, whether you are an investor, or whether you are a government, there is a very strong focus of that. And I think that is what is very, very important. Now, just to accelerate that, as Schneider Electric, for our small contribution, we have launched an initiative called Green Next, and which is a JV, which is business is selling sustainability, and then to create the movement that people are aware about that climate sustainability, which is a very important part of the environment. Last year, we have initiated another movement called Green Yoda. This is a awakening call for our calling all corporate, individual institutes to come and join the platform to share how we can, collectively work toward creating a sustainable environment and sustainable world.
But scope 3 is still not mandatory. I mean, you may do it yourself, but what about the third party? What about the supply people who you don't have direct control over? How is that going to sort of, Ashish, would you like to take that?
Yeah, certainly. I think that's a tough one, the scope 3, right? Scope 1, scope 2, people can perceive, they can touch and feel, and it's good. But I would like to take this discussion to a level where everybody should realize that this particular movement of ESG, especially the E part of it, that juggernaut is not started by a particular developed country or a particular leader or a world agency. The good part is the public, Aam Janta, is going to drive this quite a lot. And I think that awareness has increased multifold because of, let's say, social media or in general internet, and it's unstoppable now, right? So we will all be forced to do it. And when we are all forced to do it, I think innovation will come out of it. We talked about a lot of innovation, and that I think is a good part. Since you asked about, is it a danda? My view is it's both. It's carrot and stick. It cannot be one or the other, but it has to be one and the other. And therefore, we need to start talking about and making more and more clarity around the carbon pricing. Those kinds of things which are really going to be a good part that will play on to the economy and its future development, right? So,
Vivek, closing comments from you on where you see the ESG agenda and therefore the manufacturing story heading?
So I think both of them will converge, and they have to converge. We are already seeing that. And definitely on the one part, there are the financial investors who are saying that, you won't get capital, or the cost of capital will be higher if you are not ESG compliant. So that's one big push. The end, social environment, social setting, people are getting more activated around this topic, especially with what we are seeing in terms of environmental effects. Then on the other side, I think when we tackle at each entity level, scope 1 and scope 2, automatically I take care of the scope 3 for my customer. And this going forward will become extremely, extremely important when we talk about exports. Make in India will require a very strong element of ESG play, because the acceptability of a poor ESG or non-compliant ESG product in global markets is going to decline extremely sharply. So it's in everybody's interest. And the best part is, as we also heard, this is not adding cost. In fact, this is making businesses more competitive. And we heard the minister also talk about that. Power off the grid is at 8 rupees, 10 rupees. Power from your solar plant is at 2.5 rupees. The economics are just so good. There are no two ways about it. So I think all the elements are in place. We have the motivation to go ahead and do it. Now it's just incumbent upon us to just step forward and just take the bull by the horns and just do it.
And if we don't, the heat in more ways than one will be on. So we need to really be mindful of that. On this note, thank you very much to all the panelists for an absolutely engaging session. Thank you.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.